off here, but we've got Marshall Hall, Field Solution Architect, very familiar with Red Hat technologies, DevOps, all things Linux, and we'll be able to answer most questions. And then we do have an expert level resource also on the line that's going to be talking about some of the CentOS alternatives. So if it is that you want to leave CentOS, as most people that are using it in production will, what are your options? If you want to stay with RHEL, or if you want to go to another Red Hat version, or I'm sorry, another Linux version, then Alexi will be going through that. And as I mentioned, he is at expert level. So what we're going to be going through, I'll go down to the next slide, which is the agenda. So you can see there. Okay, so we're going to do a brief introduction to what LI9 is. That's just going to be about 5 minutes, so we won't take much time on that. And then Marshall Hall will get right into what's going on with CentOS and what changed with it and what the future of it is. And then it's going to also cover, as part of that, what Red Hat's doing. Certainly, Red Hat had some pushback from customers that were counting on CentOS being around for a long time, and they wanted to do something for customers that were using it in a certain way and maybe in a smaller level. But he's going to talk about the specifics of that. But there is a free RHEL that's out there now, where there wasn't previously. Then, as I mentioned, Alexi is an expert level Linux DevOps container resource. He can certainly answer most any question that has to do with the DevOps infrastructure solutions. He'll talk about CentOS. If you do have a question about how a migration would work, something to that effect, or how you would move from from CentOS to a different version, or RHEL, or you want to go to Oracle's Linux, if there's any question at all, feel free to type it in the chat box and we'll get it answered. If we can't do it on the phone, or on the call rather, we will go ahead and get to it. We'll follow up with you afterwards. And we do have pricing. The pricing is very basic. We wanted to just use an example of, here's what it would cost if you were on CentOS. Of course, it's $0, right? That's what it was. And then here's the cost if you were to use the free version of RHEL, or a paid version of RHEL, or if you're using Amazon's Linux, or if you're using Oracle Linux. So we just wanted to have just a basic cost comparison to give you some idea how those options compared, so you could take that into consideration. Then at the end, we've included a number of success stories that we're not going to go through, but I wanted to include those in the presentation that we sent out, so you have those. So if you do have questions about some of the stuff that we worked on, you have that information, and of course, as a reference, you can get back with us and we'll follow up on it. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started with the presentation, introducing you to what LI9 is. Okay, we're based in Phoenix. We've got an office in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we're in the process of opening up an office in Miami, Florida. What we focus on is we do focus on technical resources. So we have invested heavily in getting the highest expert level resources available to us. And one of them is on the line. That's Alexi Yusuf. We'll be covering some slides at the end, but he is one of the highest certified Red Hat architects in the world. We have another resource that is also very high on the list of certified architects, but we've invested heavily in just making sure that we have technical resources that understand the DevOps infrastructure. And what we do is we look at all the newer technologies and how they fit into DevOps. Of course, automation is a big piece of that. Cloud is the underlying architecture with all of it, both private and public. And then certainly security is being done the way it has traditionally been done, but then it's also being moved more into the development environment and part of the development process. And certainly we have a great understanding of that. And then as customers get to more of a zero trust environment, that's something else that really plays into what we do with customers in developing their DevOps solutions. And as I mentioned, we've got highly technical resources. What we do is we provide for customers a strategy architecture and then the actual implementation, so we can implement a turnkey solution. One of the examples we gave in the success stories, we implemented a video streaming app for a company, built a whole environment from them from the ground up and completely automated it. So that was a great project that we worked on. In doing our solutions, we look towards certainly to the emergent technologies, the newest best-in-class technologies that come out, but there's still existing architectures that customers leverage as they work to move into, if they are an existing on-premise customer they want to certainly start with a hybrid environment and they'll be moving to. And so we understand that there's existing technologies that need to be merged with emergent technologies quite a bit, and we're very, very good getting that done. We focus on open source based products, so either the commercial version of those or the open source projects themselves. We are certainly familiar with multiple versions of the same product. So if you take Kubernetes, there's a couple of versions of that. OpenShift container platform is a major version of Kubernetes, and then of course you've got VMware Tanzu is something new that's come out, and then there's some other variants. But we try to make sure that we're familiar with the open source, the commercial versions that are available, and that we really select the best-in-class product. And we do have customers both nationally and globally. We have one of our large customers is a global bank that we've done quite a bit of work from implementing a whole container environment for them to doing a lot of their automation for some of their key processes. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to, I was one slide ahead of myself, I apologize. We put this slide in to just give you an example from what we do in the DevOps, cloud, automate, and security environments, but some of the vendors, technologies that we work with. I'm not going to go through all this, but it was just to give you an idea across those solutions, what some of the specific vendors and products that we work with that make up our solutions. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Marshall Hall. So let me go ahead and stop screen sharing and he can start, and then we will go from there. But be sure to type all your questions in the chat so we can get those answered as we go through it. All right, thank you very much. Marshall, take it away.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you for that introduction and the warm welcome to present today. As Armando said, my name is Marshall Hall. I'm a field solutions architect representing the Red Hat brand. So hopefully my screen is popping up in a few minutes. I'll just give it a second. But we wanted to start off with just talking about what's changed with CentOS. What's the big announcement that was announced last year? And when we take a look at what's really happened, CentOS 8, as it stands right now, this is going to be the last version of CentOS. It's going to remain the same as it is today, and it's going to be fully supported up until the end of the year. After that, after the end of this year, no new versions of CentOS will be produced. It's not going to be supported anymore. So what that means is it won't receive security updates, and or fixes or anything like that. So that's the big change that we've seen. And rather than just saying CentOS is going away, we're migrating to this new thing called CentOS Stream. And CentOS Stream is going to be it's a great thing that is happening. So we'll talk a little bit more about why the change happened. But when we think about CentOS Stream, it's going to, each of the minor versions, they'll have about a 5-year support cycle, and they're going to follow the Red Hat, the RHEL support cycle for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So a lot of people have asked, what is CentOS Stream and why the change in name? So here's just a little statement here that CentOS Stream is really an upstream development platform for ecosystem developers, and it's the single continuous stream that's updated several times a day from the RHEL code base that's being developed. And so we can really think of it as it's a view into what the next version of RHEL will look like, and it makes it available to a much larger community than just the selected beta or preview users of RHEL that we used to see. And so there's been a lot of discussion in the community, the open source community, about what this means. Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? And so one of the, a couple of the points that kind of get lost in all of the discussion is, what exactly does CentOS Stream give us? And this isn't a beta of RHEL. It's not something that they're currently working on that's got a lot of bugs in it, a lot of problems or stability issues. This is software that Red Hat has developed that they're not ready to officially roll it into a release, but they're providing it to the community to look at the features, to know what's coming ahead, and to be able to suggest new features or to be able to contribute additional code. And so it's really a way for developers to get in earlier on the discussion and to really influence where RHEL is going. So, and it's a solid code base. They're not just going to release unstable code and let everybody else do their QA for them. This is rock solid code that Red Hat really wants feedback on the features that they're putting forward and suggestions, and the community come together as a whole. So how did we get here? If we look at the current development model for RHEL, with CentOS being downstream, we see that the Fedora project is really where developers had the ability to influence the direction of RHEL. And then once Red Hat took those community contributions, they put it into a closed development process, and it wasn't available for any review or anything else until it was released. And so once they released it, then the second problem is it's really, most of it is only available to those that have a subscription. And then the CentOS distribution was usually several weeks to a couple months behind these RHEL distributions. And so that's what CentOS Stream is trying to, or was designed to fix that. So instead of having CentOS downstream of RHEL, it's now moved upstream. And so now we have 3 places where developers can get involved with Fedora, CentOS, or with RHEL, and influence the development cycle in those first 2 categories. So with Fedora, this is really for those developers that really want to influence the direction of the core operating system, who want to look at the latest cutting edge technologies. Fedora is a fast moving distribution that has a release cycle about every 6 months. And then we move into the shared space with CentOS Stream. And this is the code base that Red Hat is planning on releasing with RHEL. They're showing you early what's in it and allowing you to start looking at it for your own development work, for your own products that rely on those components, so that you can know what's coming up, so you can add these exciting new features. And just to kind of give you an idea of what we're talking about, just because we've spent the last several years working on DevOps, working on CI/CD, all these other cool technologies that speed up the innovation process when we're developing. And this is just a logical progression, this using CentOS Stream. And so as an example, Podman is a great containerization technology within RHEL, and the Podman team, they produce a new feature or an update once a week or once every couple of weeks. And before CentOS Stream, all those updates were held privately until RHEL was released. And so now we have the ability to start seeing more of those new features and changes that are happening before RHEL's released. And then we also now get the ability as developers to influence that direction. So, if Red Hat didn't think of a use case that we like or that we need, or if they, if they kind of missed the mark on what they're developing for the feature, we have the ability now to influence the Red Hat developers through the CentOS stream. And so this is a great change. So there's the ability, there's going to be a lot of options for those of you that want to stay with CentOS by moving to CentOS Stream. But there's going to be an opportunity now for everyone to evaluate why they're using CentOS, if the workloads are appropriate for it, and you may choose a different distribution altogether, or you may choose to migrate to RHEL. And I just want to talk a little bit about the value of a Red Hat subscription for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And on the left-hand side, we see the access. And this is the part that we all expect out of our software whenever we purchase software from a company, having the access to the software. And the software is the latest of the emerging open source technologies. But one of the great things about purchasing a subscription is that you get enterprise ready software. So it's ready to go, it's hardened, it's rock solid. So you know that you can put your workloads on it and depend on it working. We have proactive analytics for remediation, and Red Hat has that 10-year lifecycle guarantee that each version will be supported for 10 years. And that's, if we think back to a couple slides ago where there's about a 5-year support cycle for CentOS Stream. That's one of the downsides. It's one of the challenges that we have, and we're hoping that we can all together as a community influence a Red Hat. But what that does is it just puts the support more on the back years, the last 5 years, into more of a paid subscription model for those people that need it. And then when we talk about support and expertise and security resources, those really go hand in hand. But Red Hat is there to solve any problems for you. On the advocacy side, on the right-hand side, this is less of a tangible thing that you can hold on to like software, but it's very important value of the Red Hat subscription. And the advocacy that Red Hat does on our behalf is funded partly with the subscription fees that are paid. And so, one of the important things is that Red Hat participates in all of these special interest groups and government agencies that are developing regulations, like for security protocols. And so they advocate on our behalf to make sure that our needs are met. Because, if we think about what gets developed as far as policy and recommendations, sometimes these guys are, a little too far into the what could work, what is possible, and they don't really think about, well, geez, like these things are going to take hundreds of man hours, or they're going to take a lot of extra effort, or what is the real implication of doing these things? And so Red Hat brings that advocacy for us. So what Red Hat has done to ease the transition is Red Hat has put together this no-cost Red Hat Enterprise Linux developer license. And Red Hat's had this for the longest time. The free license was very limited in what you could do with it. And Red Hat heard the open source community and announced a lot of positive changes to this. So now this no-cost developer license is available for free for up to 16 servers. So that can be 16 physical servers or 16 virtual servers, or you can mix and match. And you can run these for development. You can run them for what Red Hat calls individual use production or small production workloads. And you get the full entitlement for free from Red Hat to the Red Hat Enterprise Linux subscription. So what that really gives you is it gives you an entitlement to register all your systems with a Red Hat in their system. You get complete access to the Red Hat Enterprise Linux releases, updates, and errata. You can also get previous versions if you need to do development for backwards compatibility, or if you have application, a large user base that's using a previous version of RHEL, you can get access to those as well. Of course, you get access to self-service support, and that's one of the things, is that this is a self-service support model, but you get access to the Red Hat customer portal. You get access to the knowledge base articles, portal discussion groups, and magazines within that customer portal. You can submit support tickets for issues related to Red Hat network registration and Yum updates, but other than that, it's just self-support. And so this really means that within a company, each developer or each user in IT can sign up for 16 licenses, 16 free licenses, and so you can expand beyond just that 16 if you need a few more, just by having additional people sign up for these individual subscriptions. The downside is that it makes it a little more difficult to manage. It makes it a little more challenging to keep track of what everyone's doing with their licenses. But there is a way to do it. We can still use Red Hat Insights to keep track and monitor those systems, which I'll speak about in just a few minutes. So I just wanted to talk a little, just show you the life cycle of RHEL 8, and this is the last published life cycle. So the support for CentOS Stream 8.1 expires in May of 2024, and as we see, I think it's CentOS Stream 8.1 and 8.2. Those will both come out of support in 2024. And we see by looking at this chart that also corresponds with the RHEL support lifecycle for those versions. So in my opinion, the support for CentOS Stream is very closely tied to and related to the support that Red Hat's providing for RHEL itself. So it gives us that confidence that we can develop our applications and know that we have a stable system that we can develop on and deploy applications and not have to be stuck in this endless loop of upgrades and migrations. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was Red Hat Insights. And this is a part of this free developers subscription that we're talking about. And this is an exciting service. And if you've used Red Hat Insights before and said, meh, it's kind of a, it's a nice little thing with some cool dashboards, but it's really not that helpful. Red Hat took your feedback, they've taken the community responses and they've really beefed it up. They've really made a lot of improvements. So I would highly recommend, if you have kind of a sour view of it now, to go back and take another look at it. It's a great system for keeping track of your infrastructure. And one of the things that I like about it, I've worked as a security professional. I did pen testing for a few years, and security is a top of my mind now at everything I do. And what Red Hat Insights does that no other vendor can do and no other company can do is they can provide insights onto vulnerabilities as they're released. And so if we think about when a vulnerability gets released, either through CVE or what are all the other different organizations that report vulnerabilities, and you have a security tool that scans for vulnerabilities, you have to wait for that security vulnerability to get imported get added to their system, which they're usually pretty good about getting in within a day or two. And then you have to scan your systems. Depending on the size of it, could be, it could take several hours. Some scans take a couple days to finish to do this complete scan of your network. And so what Red Hat Insights does is, as soon as the vulnerability is put into the system, which corresponds with the public announcement, oddly enough, but as soon as it goes into the system, it'll identify all the systems that are connected to Red Hat Insights and tell you which ones are vulnerable to that. So you'll know just the instant a vulnerability is released, which of your systems are vulnerable and which ones you need to start actively working on patching. When we think about how to actively patch these things and fix these vulnerabilities, Red Hat Insights also produces Ansible playbooks. So we can automate that remediation within our infrastructure, and we can keep our IT folks focused on those things that are providing value to our companies rather than chasing the keep the lights on type of things that take them away from productive activities that move our companies forward. So a lot of exciting things are happening in RHEL should you decide to move to RHEL from CentOS. And that's the last of my slides. So I think Alexi is up next.
Thank you,
just
Marshall.
one second, if you want to cover this before Alexi gets started, and he can go into more detail because he's got information on the subscriptions. Marshall, is the questions came up, can the free RHEL subscriptions be used in production?
Yes.
Okay.
So they can definitely be used in production. Yes.
And then is Red Hat Insights available for the free RHEL subscription?
Yes. So you'll be able to use Red Hat Insights. And the other point about Red Hat Insights is that so this automatically monitors your environment for you and provides a lot of value. And the question came up on another call that I was doing with the customer. Well, if each person can only get 16 licenses, what if we have 3 or 4 people that get licenses? And then we'll have 3 or 4 different dashboards for Red Hat Insights. And within Red Hat Insights, you can combine all of those into a single Red Hat Insight account. And so then you can have complete monitoring in a single place so that everybody can see all the servers, even though they're not personally their subscriptions. It just takes a little more effort because you have to import each one of those subscriptions into the Insight tool, but it's a one-time thing that just takes a couple minutes per subscription, and so very valuable.
And certainly, if you look at that could save customers quite a bit of money that are actually paying for RHEL standard, which is an 8x5 support that they're using for development, is what we've seen with customers, and then they're using the 24x7 RHEL for production. So certainly, I'm sure customers will be looking at that more and seeing if it makes sense for them to use the free RHEL subscriptions, at least to the 16 server level, for their development environment. So I'd be interested to see how that plays out going forward. So sorry, Lexi, please take it away.
No problem, Armando. Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is Alexei Usov, Principal Architect with Li9 Technology Solutions. So I will be giving you a brief overview of what are different Linux of all the available different commercial Linux alternatives to CentOS available in the market, and so I've been working with Linux for more than 10 years now, including the distributions even beyond the scope of this discussion. So let me start with giving you a brief overview of what commercially supported Linux distributions are available on the market. So, for example, we can see they're compared together in different dimensions. For example, in terms of market presence, support, lifecycle cadence, as well as supported architecture, and architectures, and how well they are maintained, and how much information you can find for each of them. So, for example, if you were to migrate from CentOS, the first question that customers would ask themselves is how easy would it be for me to do that, and what will have to be changed. All Linux distributions provided on the slide in this list are binary compatible with each other because they're built on Linux standard base, which is basically a set of standards and specifications around different interfaces, such as file systems and system calls of different Linux distributions. And this conformance guarantees that if you build one application for Linux and then just move it to another Linux distribution, it will work. But even though sometimes it may require additional dependencies, and you may have to rebuild it for the target platform. So again, with the end of life for CentOS Linux looming on the horizon and getting close, many customers who run their applications on CentOS Linux are asking themselves, what should we do? Where do we go? The first question the first thing that you have to take care of is whether you are ready to move to a package compatible or package incompatible distribution. Unlike binary compatibility, which means that applications can run on all Linux platforms as long as they can support Linux standard base, package compatibility means that you won't even have to rebuild or repackage your software because, for example, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, Amazon Linux, and Oracle Linux use the same package manager, which is RPM, which means that you will most likely be able to just take an RPM package with your software or with your microservice and just install it on a different system, on a different system, such as RHEL or Amazon or Oracle. Sometimes it may require additional dependencies in the form of other packages that provide other dependent libraries. But overall, this process is a lot easier than just rebuilding the application from scratch for a completely different distribution, such as Ubuntu or SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. So, for example, you can see on the slide that two distributions have been on the market for longer than anyone. They are Red Hat Enterprise Linux and SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. They've been on the market for about 20 years. Which means that they're extremely stable. They have earned the trust and loyalty of their customer bases, and they're the most stable commercially supported Linux distributions available on the market as of now. In the support column, you can see various support offerings that are provided for those distributions. Depending on the service level, or depending on the service level that you purchase. So, for example, for RHEL, you can go with either premium support, which gives you 24/7 support available over phone or email ticketing system, or you can go with standard subscription, which gives you 8 by 5 support during standard business hours, depending on the time zone you're at. For Amazon Linux, it depends on the AWS support plan that you purchase, because Amazon Linux distribution is available only on is available for production use only on Amazon Web Services platform, and as such, it's subject to the AWS support terms and restrictions set forward by Amazon itself. Oracle Linux provides about the same service level support as RHEL. It's still 24/7, 8 to 5. Again, for standard business hours. Ubuntu Server and SUSE Linux also provide two different support plans each, aside from 24/7. In the next column, which is double life cycle, you can see that different distributions follow different release cycle, and meaning that during its lifetime, every distribution goes through different phases, which are supported according to different terms. So, for example, for Red Hat Enterprise Linux, you get full and maintenance support for 10 years in total. And you can optionally purchase extended life support, which will last for 2 years, which will give you 12 years for every release. For Amazon Linux, specifically for Amazon Linux 2, which was released in July 2018, excuse me, long-term support lasts for 5 years, which means that for the current adopters of that platform, The LTS support will end in July 2023, but it's very limited in that it's provided only to a subset of core packages. Oracle Linux, on the other hand, is fully supported for 10 years with extended support that can be purchased for 3 years. Full support for Ubuntu Server is shorter because this distribution follows much faster release cycle compared to RHEL or, for example, Oracle Linux. So full support, you can count on full support for 2 years and 3 months, extended support for 2 years and 6 months, and with every major release hitting end of life in approximately 5 years. On the other hand, SUSE Linux Enterprise Server can offer you general support for 10 years and long-term service pack support for 3 years, which gives you 13 years of support in total. Another interesting point I would like to make is that if you choose to, when you choose a target platform to migrate from CentOS Linux, you have to take into account the documentation and how well it's structured and how comprehensive it is, as well as other potential sources of information. So, for example, if you choose to migrate to Oracle or Amazon Linux, the question you will most likely ask yourself: what if something goes wrong? Do I just have to go to the community and post my question in the forum or in a mailing list, and then just essentially be at someone else's mercy? For example, with most of the distributions provided here, the only available source for you is the official documentation. And if you hit a problem that is not covered by the said documentation, you will have to raise a support ticket and wait for the member of the support team to get back to you and help you out. Two distributions do stand out, specifically Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which comes with documentation, as well as an extensive library of case-by-case solutions collected over the years by Red Hat from its customers, as well as various solutions, as well as various reference architectures for RHEL itself, as well as other products such as OpenShift, OpenStack, and pretty much everything from Red Hat portfolio. And another distribution that goes beyond just providing the documentation is SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, which provides a number of best practices to assist you in your migration. So by far, in the documentation department, RHEL, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, stands out by providing not just the documentation, but also a library of different recipes for pretty much every case you can think of. And this library is being constantly updated and expanded. Another column another criteria by which you can categorize different distributions is supported platforms or supported architectures. You can see that such platforms as Amazon Linux and Oracle Linux have very limited support, with Amazon Linux, as mentioned before, being supported for production only on Amazon, while Red Hat, SUSE, and Ubuntu Server supporting most of the major architectures, such as 32-bit, 64-bit, ARM, IBM-Z, and Power architecture as well. And when you when you choose the target platform to migrate from CentOS Linux, another question that you will undoubtedly ask yourself is, how do I do that? Are there any tools that can help me with that, or am I pretty much on my own? With RHEL for RHEL Enterprise Linux, there is a tool that called Convert to RHEL, available on GitHub, but not supported by Red Hat officially. That basically takes RPM packages from built for CentOS Linux and then rebuilds them for Red Hat Enterprise Linux, making sure that when you install the package on RHEL, you won't need to add any additional dependencies that might be missing. As has been mentioned before, with CentOS Stream, when you subscribe for when you subscribe to Red Hat Developer Program, you get access to Red Hat Enterprise Linux available for free for 16 virtual physical systems or mix and match set. And an important note is that you're not limited to just development or testing or QA or just demos. You can also use that RHEL subscription for production. And technically, Red Hat doesn't impose any limitations on the extent to which you can use that developer subscription for production. The only limitations here would be the needs of your business. So every free subscription covers only 16 systems, and it comes with self-support, which means that you don't get any official support from Red Hat, even though you can obtain help. You can obtain best effort help from subject matter experts and community on the web. Just 16 systems is definitely not enough for most large businesses. But if you're running a very little business, or if you're just a small startup, then nothing prevents you from using freely available Red Hat Enterprise Linux Edition for your production workload. You just have to keep in mind that this provided on a self-support basis, and it's just 16 systems. But again, as has been mentioned before by Marshall, different employees in your company can just register for developers program separately, and each of them will get 16 subscriptions available. But again, this will not allow your company to grow much. The question of which distribution would be the best to migrate to heavily depends on several factors. First, whether it's binary compatible or not, and most Linux distributions are. Whether it's package compatible or not, and package compatible and distributions package compatible with CentOS Linux are colored in green. So you have the choice of three commercially supported Linux systems. And the Red Hat Enterprise Linux has been in the market for longer than anyone. And the benefit of RHEL is that CentOS Linux is directly based on RHEL. It's a direct derivative of RHEL, which means when you're migrating to Red Hat Enterprise Linux, there is the risk of encountering a problem where you will need to rebuild the package or provide additional dependencies is minimal. So on the next slide, you can see comparison of different pricing models for different distributions. So, for example, CentOS is completely free. CentOS Linux is completely free. You don't have to pay for it, regardless of the number of systems you use. But it comes with no support, which means it's self-supported. Red Hat Enterprise Linux, provided through Red Hat Developers Program, is free as well, but only for up to 16 servers for one individual person. And Red Hat Enterprise Linux, provided on subscription basis, priced differently depending on the service level that you purchase. It can be either premium or standard, and the difference also and you can also subscribe either for 3 years support or for just 1 year support. CentOS Linux is self-supported as well, and practically and the number of systems you can deploy is pretty much unlimited. CentOS Linux, the support for AWS, for Amazon Linux 2 and Amazon Linux is included in the price that you pay to Amazon to run your workloads. So when you start an instance and pay an hourly fee for that instance, that fee already includes support for Amazon Linux. But again, Amazon Linux is available only on Amazon for production. So Oracle Enterprise Linux is also can also be provided on self-support basis for an unlimited number of systems, and it's also with that particular subscription, it's completely free of charge. And last but not least, Oracle Linux can also be purchased on a can also be support for Oracle Linux can also be purchased on the basis of either 8x5 or 24/7 support. And the price would vary, depend again on the level of support you purchase and the number of systems you deploy. So this is it for my part of the presentation, and I just want to wrap this up. I wanted to mention that LNN consultants have experience with all of the major Linux releases and distributions, as well as related products. And we can work with customers to further evaluate their Linux strategy. So if you have any challenges of migrating from CentOS Linux to other systems or to Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or if you want us to help you out with designing a strategy and carrying it out, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us, and we will be more than happy to help you. Thank you.
There was a question, Lexi, about Oracle Linux. If Oracle Linux is based on RHEL, how long does it take Oracle to get RHEL updates?
Typically, updates. It depends on the kind of updates. So, for example, security updates take the least amount of time. They're usually faster to be adopted, and it's just a matter of, and it's usually a matter of weeks. So, Oracle follows RHEL fairly closely. But if we compare CentOS to RHEL and CentOS to Oracle, the updates, applications deployed on RHEL will get updates faster.
Okay, it makes sense.